Hello everyone, this is Dave from Dave's Recent Things. We are coming up to the end of the year, and I did this the last couple of years, and it was successful. I know everybody loved it out there. Well, maybe not everybody, but there was a lot of comments saying, we loved this, we loved seeing these wreaths again. So today is my top 5 wreaths of 2024. These are past wreaths that I've done over the last year, and they're my selection of my top 5. Let me know if I don't include your top 5 in the comments right down below. Which wreaths did you love this year? Why don't I just get started and I'll show you my top 5 of 2024. I'm going to be using an 18-inch wire wreath frame and this 12-inch by 10-yard roll of gray burlap. These 2.5-inch wired ribbon, I have 3 different patterns, along with some florals from Michael. I have roses and hydrangeas, along with just some greenery, pipe cleaners, and some cable ties as well, along with my regular crafting utensils to create this project today. I'm starting off with cutting my pipe cleaners right in half. I'm going to be using a lot of them today, so I'm just going to create a large pile of that. And then with my burlap, what I'm going to start it off with is just pinching the very end of it. So this is going to be the start of our wreath. Now, all I do is I pinch, gather it all together, grab that half pipe cleaner, and wrap it around. So what we're doing right now is we're prepping our burlap to attach to our wreath. And today's method is the bubble method, and I'm going to do a little prep work to my burlap, and I'm going to measure out 10 inches, and then I'm going to walk my fingers all along that burlap, gather it all together, and create a little poof, if you will. So right now I am just gathering, I'm just twist tying it together with those pipe cleaners, and I am measuring it out for 10 inches. So when we put it onto the wreath, we're going to create a little bubble like I just showed you there. So again, I'm measuring out my 10 inches. So I'm doing this in 10-inch increments. I'm gathering up that burlap, wrapping it around with that half pipe cleaner, and I do not cut the excess of that pipe cleaner. I actually have all of my stems facing in one direction, facing down, and then I just keep going. I measure out that 10 inches, gather that fabric, grab that pipe cleaner, wrap it around, and I just continue on for the entire 2 rolls. So I'm doing both rolls in this method, and this is just preparing the burlap to attach to our wire wreath frame. And as you can see, I keep going and going. Now, to prepare our burlap, I am placing a half pipe cleaner every 10 inches. So I have 12-inch wide by 10-yard burlap. And there's about approximately 33 half pipe cleaners per roll that I used, and I used 2 rolls in total. You can see here I'm finishing one end. I'm just going to cut off that excess there. We don't need it. I'm just going to clean it up just a little bit. And then here is our little burlap garland that we just made, if you will, to create those little bubbles. They have our little poofs in there. And one thing that I do like to do, this is not mandatory at all, this is optional. With those ends, I just grab my hot glue gun and I just put a little bit of hot glue right at the end there, just to keep everything secured, everything together, and we get no fraying at the ends. I like doing this. Again, it's optional if you want to do it or not. And to attach to the wire wreath frame, I'm going to be using those anchors and the 2 middle wires. So we have our little V shape of our pipe cleaners, and I'm going to attach them around the anchor and the 2 middle wires. I'm just going to flip over that wire wreath frame, making sure that anchor is right in the middle, and then I'm going to twist it a couple of times, just making sure it's nice and secure. And once I flip it back over, you can see it's anchored there. It's not going to go anywhere. So we have our little poof, and then we have another pipe cleaner, and with that other pipe cleaner, we are going to wrap that around the center two wires there. So again, we have our little V shape of our pipe cleaners, flip over that wreath frame, and then I'm going to twist it around a couple of times, making sure it's nice and secure. And then I'm just going to move it over towards our first one. And then I'm going to create my little poof there, or a little bubble, just by attaching that next pipe cleaner attachment. And I keep going, moving all around, attaching those pipe cleaners in there, bringing them close together. And then when I flip it over, you're going to see how that bubble is created. There's our bubbles right there. I've got a couple created right now. I'm just going to finish doing off that whole section there, and you can see how our little burlap bubble wreath is coming along with that first section. And for that first section, I'm just going to make sure they're all nice and even. You don't have to measure it or anything, but what I like to do too at this point is I like to add some hot glue on those pipe cleaners, just so it doesn't come out. Now for each section, I am doing 10 attachments in between each section. So we have one attachment at each anchor and 10 attachments in between each section. This is what I'm doing for this 18-inch burlap bubble wreath. And here you go, we have our anchor at one end, anchor at another, and then we have those 10 attachments creating those bubbles right in between. And there is one full section all complete. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to my next section, and I'm going to follow the same pattern all the way through, attaching those pipe cleaners to it, moving it towards the previous one that I just attached, and that's how you create your little burlap bubble. And of course, you can do this with deco mesh as well. You don't have to just do this with burlap. It works exactly the same. And here we go. I am attaching my last attachment here, and I'm just wrapping that pipe cleaner around, adding that hot glue down so everything is nice and secure and not going to unravel. And here we go, our big reveal of our burlap bubble wreath. Look at that. I just love this gray burlap, and I loved this method using the burlap as well. Of course, now we're ready to make our bow and attach everything else to it. To create our bow, I'm using 3 different 2.5-inch wired ribbon, and I am cutting these at the 24-inch mark. So you can use whatever pattern or color that you want to create your bow. These are my choices today. I have 3 different patterns, and again, these are all 2.5-inch wired ribbon. I'm using 3 different ribbons. So ribbon number 1, I'm cutting 3 pieces at 24 inches. Ribbon number 2, I'm cutting 2 pieces at 24 inches. Ribbon number 3, I'm cutting 3 pieces at 24 inches. So that gives a total of 72 inches of ribbon that's needed to create the bow that I'm going to show you how to create today. And what I'm going to do with all of our pieces, I'm just going to create little dovetails at the end just by folding it over and cutting on an angle. If you want to leave just a straight cut, that's totally up to you. I love doing dovetails, so I'm going to do that for all of those pieces. And I'm going to be dovetailing both ends as well. Just again, cutting on an angle to create that dovetail. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of my pieces and I'm going to fold them in half. Now I'm not folding right at the middle. As you can see, I'm still leaving a little loop because I don't want to crease right at the middle. So I'm just folding them in half very lightly, and I'm just preparing them to create our bow. And I'm going to grab my ruler once again, lay down that piece of ribbon, measure out to 5 inches, and then I'm just going to gather at that 5-inch mark, hold it with my hand, and now I've created a loop at the top and 2 loops right at the bottom. So we created our first loop. We're going to grab another piece of ribbon, measure over that 5 inches, pinch it together, and then we're going to hold it right in my hand. And I'm going to continue doing the same thing for all of those pieces, and I just alternate with the different patterns, gathering it into my hand, and then I'll take a cable tie, wrap it right around that center, but I'm not going to pull it too tight just yet because we're going to add a pipe cleaner. It's a full-size pipe cleaner right in there, and that's what we're going to use to attach our bow to the wreath. So once that's all in there, I'm going to pull it tight now, making sure I gather all of that ribbon in there. And then, of course, you know it's fluffing time here on Dave's Wreaths and Things. I'm going to fluff that bow a little bit. I'm going to spread out those tails really just to make this 3-pattern ribbon bow pop. And here we go. Of course, I can't stop fluffing. I have a problem. Hello, my name is David, and I have a problem. And here's our bow ready for our wreath. And here is that pipe cleaner that we attached to our bow. And I'm just going to feed it right through the burlap, right to the other side of the wire wreath frame. And that's how I'm going to attach my bow on there. I'm just going to flip it over, feed that pipe cleaner through the 2 middle wires, and then boom, here we go. Our bow is nice and secure. I like the placement, so I'm going to cut off the excess, make sure it's nice and tight, and then I'm going to add, yes, some more hot glue on the back. And at this point, I am using 2 hydrangea florals and 2 roses, along with some olive branches, and I'm just going to cut those up into pieces that I know I'm going to use instead of having the long stems. Of course, you can see me there like I always do. I can't resist fluffing up my bow, but I'm going to get all my florals, like these hydrangeas, ready, along with my greenery, all ready to do my dry run. And a dry run, if you're new to my channels, I always like to lay out my florals onto my wreath, which I call a dry run without gluing, and then just arrange everything around to see where I want to place everything. And for this, I didn't end up using the hydrangea leaves or using the roses leaves. I just used the olive branches. And here you go. Once I have my dry run completed and I'm happy with it, then I just start using my handy dandy little tool, my hot glue gun, and I start gluing everything down in place. I'm gluing those hydrangeas in place. I'm gluing those olive branches in place just around my bow. And then, of course, I add on those beautiful roses. Now, these florals came from Michael's. I know they're a little bit expensive, but the outcome was amazing, and they were a buy one, get one free. So that's how I justified spending the money for those florals. But once everything is all glued down, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm so happy. But I'm going to take this to the next step, and I'm going to finish the backside using this felt roll. And this is just gray felt that I found at my local dollar store. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little glue on each side at the beginning, and then I'm going to wrap that around the backside of the wire frame. Now, I burned myself 1,000 times doing this, so please be careful. Use your little silicone fingertips if you want. I kept going and going and going using my fingers because you can't see the glue underneath, so I burned myself 1,000 times. So just a warning for you all out there, just be really careful. But it was totally worth doing this. All I'm doing is I'm just adding a little hot glue to the wire, and then I'm wrapping that felt all around the wire, and you can see the end result. It hides all of that glue, all of those pipe cleaners. It just completely finished off the wreath in a beautiful way, and what a gorgeous wreath. Of course, I'm going back to that bow to fluff it up. You know I'm going to do it. But I enjoy doing it. I know a lot of you out there enjoy the same thing. And our beautiful bubble gray burlap wreath with those hydrangeas, with those roses, and our olive branches, just for an everyday wreath. I think this is so perfect. It's so big. It doesn't really fit on my crafting table. You can kind of see cords and everything off to the side there. but I just had to show this off. And of course, here it is hanging on my storage door, that gray burlap, those white roses with the white hydrangeas, and that ribbon that I just love the combination of. I am so happy with this everyday wreath, and I hope you are as well. Today I'm going to be using a 15-inch work wreath frame with the stems already attached, along with this 10-inch deco mesh. I have a lime green and an emerald green. There's going to be 4 rolls, and 2.5-inch wired ribbon in various colors, along with 1.5-inch wired ribbon, and these cute little sprays with purple, yellow, and this cute little wreath attachment bunny with that pink gingham. And of course, all of these products are provided by my friends at TMI Gifts, so thank you so much. And then some add-ons. I'm going to use these carrot picks from the Dollar Tree, and of course my regular crafting utensils to create this project today. I'm starting off cutting out my deco mesh, and I'm going to be cutting our lengths at 30 inches. So that's 30 inches for all of the deco mesh we're using today. And just to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to double layer my deco mesh as I cut. All I do is I place one right on top of the other, measure out the 30 inches, and use my rotary cutter to cut it all. And then I just keep going and going and going with that cutting at the 30-inch mark. So for our deco mesh lengths, we are using the cruffle method today. So deco mesh number 1, there's going to be 18 pieces cut at 30 inches. Deco mesh number 2, 18 pieces at 30 inches. Total pieces of deco mesh is going to be 36 pieces cut at 30 inches. So you're going to need approximately 30 yards. So I'm using 2 rolls of 10 yards per color. So it's a total of 4 rolls. It's 10 inch by 10 yards that I'm going to be using for the cruffle method today. And here is our work wreath frame. These are a little bit higher and thicker than the normal Dollar Tree ones. The Dollar Tree ones are about half, but we have our little stems already attached with that evergreen, and that is where we are going to place our deco meshes, right in between those stems. Normally I create my own, but this time around I'm going to be using this working wreath frame along with 2 pieces of deco mesh per stem. So I'm going to start off. We have a little curl in our deco mesh, so the curl is going to face up. I'm just going to place a pair of scissors down to make it a little bit easier on me. And I'm also going to be using, you can use either a clothespin or a little clamp like I have here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to unroll such that the cut ends are at the bottom and the manufactured or finished ends are at the sides. And then I'm just going to create a little tube just simply by rolling up that deco mesh. I'm going to place a clamp on it, rotate it, and then I'm going to unravel the rest of that deco mesh. And then I'm going to start creating another little tube just simply by rolling it up right on the other end. Once we have our tube, you're going to just place your thumbs right in the middle, and that's going to be your anchor, and your fingers are going to be free to do the walking. Do you remember that Yellow Pages ad a long time ago? Maybe I'm dating myself. Let your fingers do the walking. That's exactly what we're going to do here. And we're just going to walk our fingers up the center, gathering that deco mesh right where our thumb is. And then once we come to the second loop at the top, we'll take that clamp off, and then we'll just squish it together right in the center. Hold it nice and tight so you can see there is our little ruffle in the middle with our loops at the ends. Now we're just going to go to our stems, open it up a little bit, place that middle port of the deco mesh right in between, and then give it one good twist. Just make sure it's nice and secure, and we have our first cruffle already placed in our frame. Now I'm going to work on our second one. Like I mentioned just a little bit earlier, I'm using 2 different colors and I'm placing them in the same stem. So our first step is to create that loop, add that little clamp on there or clothespin. Then I'm going to unravel the rest, create another loop at the bottom, anchor my thumbs, and then what are we going to do? We're going to let our fingers do the walking right down the middle, gathering up that deco mesh. That's creating the ruffle portion of this. Once we get to the top where our existing loop is, we'll just hold that in place, take that paper clip off, and then we'll just squish it all together in the middle, and our ruffles and our loops are all created, making that cruffle little attachment. Now I'm going to place that right on top of our previous one, right within the same stem, and I'm going to attach it just by twisting it. And then of course we'll fluff it up a little bit, and our first cruffle is all created. And I'm going to move on to my second little stem. I'm going to be doing the exact same procedure over and over again, creating those loops at the bottom, ruffling it together in the center, and another loop right at the top. And then I'm going to add those two colors together. And I'm alternating colors. I'm going from emerald green to lime green, and then I start lime green and then go emerald green, just to give it a little bit of interest, a little bit of panache, I guess you want to say. Just that it's not all the same color that's on the top. So it gives it a little bit of interest there. And we have our first layer all done, and I am ready to move on to my second layer where my stems are. So I'm just going to find my first stem right here, and I'm just going to open it up a little bit, and then I'm going to grab those two pieces of deco mesh and repeat that same cruffle method process over and over again, adding those two pieces of deco mesh per stem and alternating the colors and just twisting them right in place. And then I just move on, find my next stem, and then the next stem until the entire second layer is done. And now we have all of our cruffles all in place, and I love this method. It gives you the loops, it gives you the little ruffle, a lot of interest, a lot of pizzazz for that wreath. And I'm going to be using 5 different ribbons today, cut at 14 inches. So all of my ribbon is going to be cut at that 14-inch mark. There's this solid lime green one that I'm using. There's a Happy Easter, kind of like a red, or I should say a pink truck. And then I have this plaid, which is multicolor, which is perfect for Easter, along with this burlap ribbon that is nice and colorful with those eggs. And then a final burlap, which is the white and lime green burlap. All of my ribbon is cut at the 14 inches. So the pink checkered ribbon, I'm cutting 21 pieces at 14 inches. The solid green ribbon is 18 pieces at 14 inches. The Happy Easter ribbon is 18 pieces cut at 14 inches. The gray-white check ribbon is 18 pieces cut at 14 inches. And of course, our last one, the same 18 pieces at 14 inches. So you're going to need approximately 36 yards of ribbon. Once I've cut it all, I'm just going to fold them in half and create little dovetails on all those 96 pieces of our ribbon. It seems like a lot, but trust me, wait until you see the final product. It looks amazing. I'm so happy I did all of this cutting. So I'm going to go through and cut all my dovetails. Now time to attach our little friend here. It comes in 2 pieces. There's a head portion and a leg portion, and they both have wires right at the back. So I'm just going to undo those wires. Once I do that, I'm just going to feed it right through the back, and I'm going to place the head in the center of our wreath such that it looks like her head is poking out. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap that wire right around the wreath frame to make sure it's nice and secure. And I'm just going to twist it a couple of times. And once it's all in place, I like to add a little electrical tape. And if you don't have electrical tape or never used it before, I love using this for this exact reason. It's stretchy tape. You can wrap it around. You can pull it. It's perfect to wrap that wire around so you don't scratch your door, don't scratch your wall, or you don't scratch yourself either. So it just covers that up and protects it from all your surfaces. So we have our little head already attached. She's right in the center there, poking through, saying, "Happy Easter, everyone!" And now I'm going to attach the legs using the exact same method, wrapping the wire around the wreath frame. I'm going to create little bundles first with our ribbon. So all I'm doing is I'm placing that ribbon right down in a crisscross pattern. I am using all of the ribbon for a couple of these little bundles that I'm creating. I'm going to create 3 in total, and then I'm just going to squish it right in the center, fold it a little bit, and then I'm going to place this first bundle right below her chin. And I'm just going to wrap that in the existing stems that we have. Give it a little fluff every now and then because we've squished it a little bit. Make sure everything's all fluffy and beautiful. And once that's done, I could see a little bit of that greenery. So I decided to take some of these little styrofoam colorful glitter balls from those sprays and just hot glue them together right in a bundle covering that little evergreen stem. And then I'm going to move on and I'm going to create 2 more of those larger bundles using each ribbon. And I'm going to put one on the right hand side of her face, doing the same thing. And then what I'm going to do for the centers, I'm just going to cut a little piece, make a tube, and then I'm going to hot glue it right over that green stem. So that's all hidden on the side as well. And then I'm going to create one for the left side of her face, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Cut a little piece of ribbon, wrap it up in a tube, and then hot glue it over top of that little green stem so we don't see it. And of course I started fluffing at this point, but I'm not going to show it to you. And then for every other stem that is left, I'm going to just add a 2.5 inch and a 1.5 inch ribbon. So I'm doing that all along the lower section and all along the upper section as well, filling in those remaining green stems that we have. And I vary the patterns and the colors for each one. Again, I'm using a 2.5 inch and a 1.5 inch for each stem, just kind of filling that in with all of this beautiful, colorful ribbon. Once that's all done, I'm kind of playing around with placement of those carrots. These are coming from the Dollar Tree. I just take the wooden skewers out and then I just hot glue those carrots down. I used 3 in total and I just place them randomly around, and then I cut off the little edges of these sprays and I'm just gluing them in individually all around the wreath as well, just adding some more interest, some more color. And look at that. Last one going in, and I am so pleased with how this wreath turned out. You know what? We have to name that bunny. I don't know what the name could be, but we have to. I've got also a lot of questions asking me about how to hang the wreaths, and I typically use a wreath hanger. Now this square portion, that goes on the door, and then there's a little hook on the end, and that's where you hang your wreath off of. Now I have these little furniture pads on mine just so it doesn't scratch up my door. A great way to keep, your door from getting scratched. Dollar Tree also sells them. They're a little bit flimsier, but hey, they do the job. They have that square portion at the top for your door. And then of course on the opposite side, they have that portion where you can hang your wreath. So if you haven't seen these, ask your manager at the Dollar Tree. If they have them, they work great. And a little tip and a little trick that I usually do is I will take some coordinating ribbon or ribbon that I've used for the wreath. I'll cut off a piece, and then what I do is I just hot glue it right onto that little metal wreath hanger. It's nice and easy, it's nice and quick. You don't have to worry about being too particular because most of it is going to be hidden. At least the bottom portion is anyways. I just wrap it around using my hot glue gun. And of course, the beauty part of this is you can totally take this off and use it for another ribbon. Once you're done using it, you can take it off. The metal and the hot glue, it just comes apart nicely. Of course, you can see that one end is a little bit ragged, but we're not going to see it. It's all good. The main part is all covered with that coordinating ribbon, and now we can use it to hang this gorgeous little Easter Bunny Cruffle Method wreath. I'm thinking her name could be Gwen. What do you think about that? Gwen the Easter Bunny or something like that? Let me know in the comments down below what fun name we can name her. And here she is hanging on our door. I just love the green background, and there's our little door hanger. I love the green background and how it really makes that pink and white bunny just pop. We have all of our ribbons in there. We have those carrots in there. Just a spectacular, wonderful wreath for your front door. I am going to be working with a 14-inch wire wreath frame today, along with this Kirkland ribbon from Costco. This is 2.5-inch wired ribbon. It's from Kirkland and it's 50 yards, and I think this was like $11. I got a red velvet, a striped one, and kind of a geometric Christmas one. If you don't have a Costco, Dollar Tree also has 2.5-inch wired ribbon that'll be perfect for this project, along with some white pipe cleaners that I'm going to be using and my regular crafting utensils to create this project today. First thing I'm going to do is cut all of my ribbon, and the magic number today is 8 inches. So I'm going to be measuring out and cutting all of my ribbon at the 8-inch mark. So I'm going to be doing all 3 of those different ribbons at the 8-inch mark. For this wreath, we're doing a ribbon wreath today. For ribbon 1, 2, and 3, there's 40 pieces each cut at the 8-inch mark. Now that totals about 960 inches, 80 feet, or about 27 yards of wired ribbon that I'm going to be using today. Once I got all those cuts done, I'm just going to fold it in half and then just cut on an angle to create dovetails on both sides on every single piece of ribbon that I am using today. And then once that's all done, I've got them all laid out along with pipe cleaners. Now these pipe cleaners I've just cut in half, and I'm going to be using half pipe cleaners. And I'm just going to use 5 pieces of ribbon. And what you're going to do is just gather it right in the center. Take your fingers, hold it right in there so it creates a little bow shape, if you will. Then grab your next ribbon, find the center, gather it together, and then lay it on top on an angle, kind of overlapping a little bit of our first ribbon. And then you're just going to keep picking random ribbons, doing the same thing, overlapping them, creating like a star shape. Again, I'm using 5 pieces of ribbon per bundle, and I'm going to be creating 24 bundles today. Once you've got that all done, then you just take a pipe cleaner, feed it through the middle, wrap it around, and then of course you can fluff up that ribbon a little bit at this point, and we've created our first bundle for our ribbon wreath. From that point, I'm going to do the same thing over and over again, just finding the center, gathering it together, placing it in my left hand, making sure I have those 5 pieces there, grab that pipe cleaner, and then just wrap it around the center, twisting it a couple of times, fluffing it up a little bit, and creating all of our 24 bundles for our Christmas ribbon wreath. Now that we have our bundles ready, we've got our wreath frame here. I'm going to be using the 2 middle wires of our wreath frame. There's 4 in total, so we're going to use the 2 middle, and I'm going to be creating sections here. So where the cross anchors are, I'm going to be placing 4 bundles per section. So that section again is in between those 2 bars. We're going to flip that face down, that's our wire wreath frame, and then we're going to also flip over our bundles we just created with those little V's there, and then I'm going to place them in the inside and outside holes such that the 2 wires in the middle are in between our pipe cleaner stems. Once that's there, then we're just going to twist it a couple times, fold over the excess of that pipe cleaner, and we've got our first attachment done. We're going to do the exact same thing with the second one, just placing the 2 wires in between our pipe cleaner, twisting it a couple of times, and then we move it down a little bit, and we keep adding on those little ribbon bundles per section. So I'm working on my 3rd one now, and I'm going to be adding the 4th and final one for this section right now, just twisting it right in place. Once I've got that twisted, we can flip it over, and then you can kind of see where we're going so far. So here is one section completely done, and you can just see that fullness of those ribbons. Now I'm just going to continue on the next section doing the exact same thing. You're just going to wrap those pipe cleaners around those 2 inside wires, and here's 2 sections done, and I am loving this right now. I'm so excited. I'm just going to finish the rest, and as I'm adding the last one on here, I know my favorite part is coming up is when I turn over the wreath for the first time. Let's flip this over, but first I'm going to make sure everything is nice and even, and I got all 4 per section. And look at that. Here is our beautiful ribbon wreath in its glory already, and we're not even done. But you can totally leave it here. You don't have to add on a bow. I'm going to show you how to make a really simple bow in just a second, but you can totally leave it there if you want. For my bow, I'm going to measure out 24 inches. So my ruler only goes up to 18. So I'm going to cut at the 6-inch mark. So that's 24 inches in total. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces. And then I'm going to cut additional piece at the 5-inch mark as well. So for a bow, there's 2 pieces cut at 24 inches, 1 piece cut at the 5-inch mark. Now with my 2 pieces and my little pipe cleaner, I'm going to place the good side facing down of my ribbon, fold it over. I'm going to find that middle mark where my index finger is, and then I'm going to overlap that one end a little bit right in the middle. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the other end. That's going to be our little middle section. I find that middle again, and then I'm just going to gather my fingers together, squish that all together. That's the center of our bow. And I'm going to place a pipe cleaner right in that middle. This is a full-length pipe cleaner that I'm using here. And I'm going to twist that a couple of times, making sure it's nice and secure, and then that bow is not going to go anywhere. Once that's all done, I'm going to dovetail the other 24-inch piece of ribbon, and this is just going to finish them off at the end. This is the tail that we're going to use. I'm going to place the good side facing down, find my center, gather it together with my fingers again. Then I'm just going to create a V shape with it, bending it over. And this is wired ribbon, so it does hold the shape a little bit. And then I'm going to place that right in between my 2 pipe cleaner stems, give it a couple of good twists. And with our little piece of ribbon, that 5-inch ribbon, I'm just going to fold it into thirds, just folding it over, creating one little width of ribbon, if you will. And then I'm going to place that right in the center. And then adding a little bit of hot glue for one end, folding it up, adding a little bit more hot glue for our second end, and then I'm just going to hold that right in place for a little bit just to make sure it's nice and dry. And once that's all dry, we have our bow ready for our wreath. Now I'm just going to take those pipe cleaners, find a spot, and then I'm just going to feed it right to the back. And then just like we added our bundles, I'm going to add and twist that pipe cleaner right around the 2 middle wires, flip it over, and then I'm going to center that bow, fluff it up a little bit because you know we have to fluff up the bows here at Dave's Wreaths and Things. And here is our beautiful wreath. Here it is hanging on my door, and I cannot tell you how much I love the combination of these ribbons. And of course, that plain ribbon for the bow, you don't need more than that. And again, like I said, you don't have to have a bow at all. Today I'm going to be using the 14-inch round wire wreath frame, along with this beautiful and bright summer sign. This is just a wood sign from the Dollar Tree. I love the colors of this, nice and bright for summertime, of course. Just love it. And as well, I'm going to be using 5 packages of these pipe cleaners. Again, that's 5 packages in total, along with my regular crafting utensils to create this project today. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut all of those pipe cleaners right in half. I'm just eyeballing it and cutting them in half, but if you want, you can fold them in half and then find that center and cut them as well. For me, I just found getting them together, cutting them right in half just by eyeballing them was perfect for me. And I just went through and I cut all 5 of those packages. And once I'm done with the cutting, I just sort them out into all of my colors: green, yellow, red, orange, and purple. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just wanted to get a pattern going, and I just sorted all of my pipe cleaners out. Once they're all sorted, I bring back my wire frame, and here I'm not going to be using all of the 4 wires, but I am going to be using for the first round the second inside wire. And all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to fold the pipe cleaner in half a little bit and tie it a couple of times, just twisting it around just a couple of times right on that second inside wire. Again, just using that second inside wire, grabbing that pipe cleaner, folding it in half a little bit so I can find that center, and then just twist tying it right around that wire just a couple of times. And I'm only tying it around that one wire. And then I'm just going to continue on doing that exact same pattern for all of my pipe cleaners. Again, I'm using a pattern here. You don't have to use a pattern if you don't want to. You can be totally random. But for myself, I decided to do this pattern, and I repeated the pattern over and over again until I filled up that entire section of those pipe cleaners, just twist tying them around, moving to the next color, and so on and so forth. Once I get all of my pipe cleaners down, they are nice and beautiful, and I'm loving how this is working out so far. And then I'm going to be using not the next wire, but I'm going to be using the outside wire. So for this, I'm leaving one wire, attaching it, leaving one wire, and then attaching again. And I'm doing the same pattern and the same process. I'm starting off with the green, twist tying it a couple of times, finding my next one, twisting that around a couple of times, and just attaching those pipe cleaners on there. And my pattern is green, yellow, red, orange, and purple. Now for me, what I found a little bit easier was to flip that wreath frame down so it's face down now, and I continued on working on that outside wire. So you don't have to do this, it's just a little tip from me. I found it a lot easier to flip it over and then work on that outside wire, twisting those pipe cleaners around and around. Now this may look like a lot of work, twist tying all of these on there, but it is definitely worth it. So far I have my first section done, as you can see here. It looks great, it looks phenomenal. I'm so happy with it. And of course now all I'm going to do is I'm going to continue around all those other sections, filling my pipe cleaners up. And here I am just doing my last little bit. I have some pipe cleaners left over. I'm going to be using those again in a little bit and I'll show you. But I'm just going to put those off to the side and I'm just going to flatten out those pipe cleaners a little bit. Because what I'm going to be doing is adding some hot glue just on where I'm tying those pipe cleaners on there. So I'm just gluing it right around the back, as you can see right here, all along the inside and the outside wires, just to hold everything in place. I don't want it to move all around, so I found this little hot glue right on there really helped. And look at this, once it's all dry, we've got that pipe cleaner wreath all ready to go for our sign. I just couldn't stop playing with those pipe cleaners. I just love how this turned out. Look at this, so beautiful, so summery. And here we go, I'm bringing back my unused pipe cleaners, and what I'm going to do for my sign is I'm just going to take one pipe cleaner of each color, and then I'm just going to feed it through that hole. I wanted to cover up that hole so it wasn't showing, and I'm just going to twist those pipe cleaners right around once I get it through the hole, and it'll hide that hole nicely with those pipe cleaners. Of course, once that's all done, I'm going to glue down that sign with some hot glue. So the first thing I do is I just add a little hot glue on those crossbars of our wire wreath frame. Just adding a little bit of hot glue just to kind of hold it in place for a bit. Place that sign right in the center, and then I'm going to hold it down once I have it placed there, just for a little bit for it to dry. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to go around right at the crease where the sign meets the pipe cleaners, just to make sure that sign doesn't go anywhere. We'll let that dry, and once it's done, here is our finished pipe cleaner Hello Summer wreath. I love the color of this sign. It was the inspiration for this wreath, and I just loved using these pipe cleaners. Something a little different rather than a little bit of deco mesh on there. So you can use those pipe cleaners to your heart's content. And of course, you can use any color, different colors, the same color that you want if you want to create your own Hello Summer wreath. We're going to go big today, and I'm using an 18-inch wire wreath frame, some 10-inch deco mesh in green and white. I show the red, but I don't end up actually using it today. I have an elf wreath attachment. You can see the legs and the hat there. This wooden sign that says, "Don't get your tinsel in a tangle." 2.5-inch wired ribbon in various colors and sizes, some Christmas ornaments that are nice and large, along with some other regular green and red Christmas ornaments, these little candy cane picks, this little metal "To Santa" letters sign, and of course, I'm going to be using my regular crafting utensils to create this project. I'm going to start off making my working wreath frame, and I'm going to work in one section at a time. Now, this is a larger wreath frame, so it's like the 14-inch, but it's just a little bit larger. So I'm going to grab my full-length pipe cleaners. We're going to work on our working frame first, and I'm going to use the 2 outside edges plus that crossbar. Then I'm just going to take my pipe cleaner, wrap it around, and twist it a couple of times. Our next attachment is going to go right in the middle of that section on the 2 outside wires. We're going to wrap that around, and then we're going to hit the other crossbar and do the exact same thing, twist that around. So we have 3 per section. Then for the next section, we're going to work in the middle, then we're going to hit that crossbar, work in the middle, hit the crossbar for all of those sections. So now we have our outer section all done. We're going to work in the middle, and then we're going to use the 2 inside wires right in between our 2 existing pipe cleaner stems we just created. So I'm just taking that full-length pipe cleaner, going right in between the outside stems and attaching on the 2 inside wires, and I'm going to finish up doing the same method throughout the entire inside of that wreath. And once we're done, we have our working wreath all ready, and we have 12 stems on the outside and 12 stems on the inside for a total of 24 stems all around. Next, our beautiful number for the day, or the number 1 number, is 30 inches. Number 1 number? I don't know. Anyways, we're going to be doing 30-inch cuts today. I just made myself laugh. And I am doing the white and the green deco mesh. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to place one on top of the other. I'm going to grab my rotary cutter and cut at that 30-inch mark. And I'm going to continue doing those cuts at the 30 inches until I use up the whole roll. So I'm using 1 roll of white deco mesh, 1 roll of the green deco mesh, and each one is 10 inches by 10 yards. And I'm going to cut each color 12 pieces, cut at that 30-inch mark. So these are our cuts to create our cruffle method, and that's the method we're going to use today, wreath. And to create our cruffle, I'm just going to get a clothespin and a little bit of a weight along with my newly cut deco mesh. It has a natural curl, so I want the natural curl to face up. I'm going to put down my weight right at the end just so it doesn't curl on me. We have a cut edge at the bottom and a manufactured edge on the left and the right hand side. All we're going to do to start our cruffle is we're going to curl that bottom edge, so the cut edge, and we're going to make a little tube out of it, or I like to say cannoli, and I like to roll it 3 or 4 times. Grab that clothespin, close it off, and then we're going to rotate it 180 degrees, and we're going to work on the other end, creating that cruffle. So again, we're creating a little curl right now. We're going to roll it about 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4 times if you want. And now what we're going to do is we're going to anchor those thumbs down, and we're going to let those fingers do the walking. So with our fingers, we're going to gather all that deco mesh, and at this point, you're creating your ruffle. So basically, this is a curl and a ruffle bundle that we're creating, which is the cruffle method. Once you have that, you can see we have our ruffles right in the center and our little curls or loops right at the end. And then we're going to open up our first pipe cleaner stem, grab that bundle, and we're going to place that right in between those 2 stems. And then you're just going to pull it a little bit tightly and then wrap it around a couple of times, making sure it's nice and secure. Fluff it up just a little bit, and we have our first cruffle bundle all attached to our wreath. I'm using 2 different colors, so now I'm going to work on the green. Again, we're rolling up the bottom a couple of times. We're placing our we're placing the clothespin on there. Then we're going to work on the other side, roll that up a couple of times, place those thumbs down like an anchor, and then let those fingers do the walking. We're going to create that ruffle right in the center, and now our cruffle bundle is all done. We're going to go to the next available pipe cleaner stem on our wreath frame, and we're going to twist that a couple of times, fluff it up, and then I'm just going to follow the same method over and over again. For my wreath, I'm using white and green, so I'm alternating between those two colors, creating those ruffles, attaching them in those pipe cleaner stems, and I'm just going to roll and ruffle and roll and ruffle to my heart's content until I fill that whole outside. So here's the outside layer all done. Now it's time to work on the inside, and I do the exact same method. So you're rolling, you're ruffling, you're gathering it all together, and then now we're going to place it into the inside stem, and we're going to be working on our inside now. Now, I work from the outside in. If you want to work from the inside out, you totally can do that. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. I've done the outside in for years. It's just how I operate. But if you would prefer to work on the inside out, some people say it's a lot easier than working the outside in, but I like to work the outside in. But again, your choice, your wreath. Here it is all done. We have our base wreath already in the cruffle method. I'm just going to fluff it up a little bit. And I love how full this method is. Just look at how full this base wreath is already. And we haven't even put anything on it. I'm in love with it. Now I'm going to do a bow. So I'm just laying out my 2.5 inch wired ribbon, and at the 14-inch mark, I'm going to gather it together. And then with my left hand, with my 2 fingers, I'm just going to place that in between. So I'm going to hold everything in that left hand. Then I'm going to measure out 14 inches. We're creating a loop, bringing it back to my left hand. I'm going to transfer it there, and now we've just created our first loop. We're going to twist it so the good side faces up. You always want that good side facing up. We're going to measure out that 14 inches again, creating another loop, and then we're going to bring that right back to our left hand where we're gathering all of our loops and tails. I'm going to continue on measuring out and making those loops at the 14 inches. For this bundle, I'm going to do 4 loops and 2 tails. So once we get to the second tail, I'm cutting it, adding a full-length pipe cleaner right in the middle, twisting it a couple of times to make sure it's nice and secured. Going to fold over the ends of the ribbon, cut on an angle for our dovetails, and that is our first segment all done. I'm going to continue on to my next 2.5 inch wired ribbon, and this time my measurements are 12 inches. So I'm doing the exact same procedure we just did. We're going to measure out that 12 inches, cut for the tail, measure out 12 inches, bring it towards the left hand to create 4 loops. Then we're going to create 1 tail. We're going to cut at the end, grab a pipe cleaner stem, wrap it around the middle, making sure you got all that ribbon included, twist it a couple of times, and then dovetail the end, and our second segment is all complete. For the third segment, I am going to be using the 10-inch mark, so 10-inch tails, 10-inch loops, and for this one, I'm only creating 3 loops at that 10-inch mark, and then once we hit that 10-inch mark again, cut it for the tail, add that pipe cleaner right in the center, twist it around, and then of course we're going to finish off those tail ends with a nice dovetail, just cutting on an angle. And now our final segment is at the 8-inch mark. So we're doing a tail at 8 inches, then we're going to do our loops at the 8-inch mark, and then we're going to create 4 loops and 2 tails, finishing off with a cut, pipe cleaner, twisting it all around, and of course dovetailing the ends of those ribbons. Once we have all of our segments done, I'm going to bring them back on my table. And this is the first segment, so this is the largest, which is going to be at the bottom, and then we're going to work our way up in size. All I'm doing is I'm taking the next segment, wrapping the pipe cleaner around the center, twist tying it a couple of times, making sure it's nice and secure, and then I move on to my next segment. I'm going to fluff it up and arrange it just a little bit because it's pretty much crushed at this point. And then I'm going to twist tie that all around, get that attached, and then I'm going to attach my last segment on there as well. And Now it's time to fluff up the bow that we have all of our segments all together. Of course, I can't stop fluffing. I really have to say to myself, stop it, Dave, stop it. But here is our bow for our wreath all completed. Next, I'm going to do some more cuts, and I'm going to cut this time at the 12-inch mark. So these are the ribbons that I'm going to be used to attach to the pipe cleaner stems on my wreath. So I have the green striped, the black and white striped, I have this geometric Christmas tree, and of course this crazy polka dot one that I'm all cutting at 12 inches. So the 2.5-inch wired ribbon, I'm cutting 12 pieces each at 12 inches, and the 1.5 inches, I'm only cutting 6 pieces each at the 12 inches. Once I put them into the wire wreath frame, I'm going to alternate. So we're going to dovetail, and how you dovetail is you just fold your ribbon in half and then cut on an angle, and that's going to create a little V shape or a dovetail right at the end of your ribbon. I'm going to take all of that ribbon I just cut and I'm going to dovetail both ends. Now we're going to attach it to our base wreath. I'm crisscrossing the 2.5-inch ribbon. I'm going to grab 1.5-inch wire ribbon, fold it over to find the center, gather it all together. Then I'm just going to push it down a little bit so it stands up, open up my first available pipe cleaner stem, and I'm just going to add that right in there, right at the center, twist it a couple of times, and we have our first ribbon attachment on our base wreath. I'm going to do alternating, so the next available I'm going to skip, and then the next available one I'm going to do my ribbon attachment. So again, I'm gathering 2 of the 2.5-inch wire, 1 of the 1.5-inch, gathering it together in the middle and placing that right in between those 2 pipe cleaner stems, and we're going to twist that around, making sure it's nice and secure. You don't have to fluff it up too much at this point. I usually fluff everything up right at the end. So again, remember, we're going to skip one and then I'm going to add to the next available one. And I'm just going to gather my ribbon together, create that bundle, and place it right in there. So I'm doing the outside and the inside, and here is all of our ribbon all attached. Once we have all of our ribbon attached, I'm just going to cut off those excess pipe cleaner stems. We don't need them anymore. Sometimes I have to dig for them because they're right in there, but I'm going to cut all of those off at this point. And the next step is completely optional. You don't have to do it. I like to do this for all of my wreaths. Is I go in with my hot glue gun and I just place a little hot glue right on all those pipe cleaner stems we just cut. And now the beautiful part, here it is in all of its glory already. I am loving it. But of course, now we're going to add everything on there. For the wood sign, I just glued some pipe cleaners on the back, and then I'm just going to feed those pipe cleaners right to the back. You just flip the wreath over, and then you can twist tie on that wire frame right at the back a couple of times, and then you just make sure that that sign is nice and even how you want it to be placed. I'm going to have mine on a little bit of an angle, so it may look off at first, and then we're going to attach our elf hat and ears. The wreath attachment comes with these little wires already attached, which is perfect. So all I'm going to do is figure out where I want to place it, and then I'm going to feed that wire right to the back. And just like we hung our sign, I'm just going to attach it there. But before I do a full attachment or a couple of twists, I'm only going to twist it one time, and then I'm going to check to see how I like it. And it's a little bit off for me, so I'm going to change that. So I'm just going to untwist it, move it over to the next wire section, and then I'm going to really twist that in place once I'm happy with it. You can see here I'm kind of looking at it, making sure it's good, and now I'm going to do a couple of full twists, making sure it's there, and then cut off the excess. Now we're going to add that big beautiful bow, right the same method we did with everything else. Feed those pipe cleaners right through the back. Once you've got it twisted on there, I'm going to fluff it up a little bit because it is getting really squished, and then I'm going to work on my legs. So again, these legs have wires attached already. I'm going to feed it through the back, twist it around a couple of times, make sure it's nice and secured. And I wanted to bend the legs a little bit. Unfortunately, this wreath is so big, it really didn't catch on camera, but I did end up crossing the legs and gluing the legs together a little bit right at the feet, and a little bit of glue right underneath the sign. So here you can see it all done. We have our elf on there, we have our bow on there, and our big beautiful "don't get your tinsel in a tangle." Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish adding everything on. So my candy canes, my Christmas ornaments, I'm just using hot glue for all of this. I've added that mailbox sign on there, and here is our final result. Like I said, this wreath is so big, it doesn't fit on my craft table. You can see my dirty floors. Don't look at my dirty floors. But here is the elf in all of its glory, and I have to say, yes, it is full. Yes, it is busy. Yes, there is a lot going on here. But you know what? Here it is on my door, and I am just beaming from ear to ear. I love it so much. I know for the last episode of my Wreathmas week, I wanted to go big or go home, and this definitely was big, and I'm just so excited for it. And here it is on my front door. I could not wait to get it out there, so it's hanging up there right now. A big beautiful cruffle wreath with that huge elf wreath attachment, our little mailbox, that big bow. Just absolutely love this, and I hope you do as well.